You're listening to the Big Three of B2B Leadership podcast with Mike Faherty, where world-class business leaders share their secrets for personal, organizational, and market growth. Gain powerful insights from industry leaders that have been tested by the fire.
Well, today we have the pleasure of being joined by Jason Arcemont. Jason is the founder of Python Holdings in Houston, Texas. He's a serial entrepreneur and a visionary leader. And having started, he started a number of businesses and grown a number of those things to really a pretty impressive status. And so today our goal is to just kind of visit with Jason and learn a little bit about his experience and his entrepreneurial journey and go from there. So look, Jason, it's really exciting to have a chance to talk with you this morning.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk with you. It's been a while, Mike. I'm looking forward to it, man.
Awesome. Well, so you and I crossed paths probably the first time, maybe 11 or 12 years ago. I was thinking about that.
And that's crazy.
Yeah, it's been a while. And I think whenever we first met, you had just recently in the year or two, maybe prior to that, had started Brightbox.
Yep.
Which was I guess you would call it a branding agency, I think is how you kind of positioned it. And now, fast forward 10, 11, 12 years, and you're running a number of different companies and in a couple different sectors, and particularly manufacturing, which is an interesting sort of direction. So I really am looking forward to understanding. We haven't talked in a long time, so understanding how that happened, where that came from, why that direction. So why don't we go back to the beginning, though? So first of all, was Brightbox your first business? Was that the first company you started?
That was the first successful one.
Okay, fair enough.
I always dabbled since I was a young kid, in trying to make money, and I grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. So it was kind of second nature to go out there and hustle and find ways to build solutions for demand. And that was kind of how I always saw it. I looked for areas where I knew people needed something, and then I tried to come up with a solution to fill it. And the first kind of good success that we had was with Brightbox, and that was marketing, branding service company. That led into several different business service companies. We had a trade show exhibit group, we had a printing company, we had HR outsourcing, we had a staffing, recruiting, we had a corporate training company. And what was really, really cool about that is it fed my desire to just want to work with a lot of different type of people and grow personally. The more companies that you work with, the more you learn. I was able to do a lot of different industries. And while I was doing that, I was learning a lot about, how to market brands and how to, launch companies into marketplaces, because we were being hired to help companies do that. And decided, to break off from that, sell those companies off, and get into some of the spaces where some of my previous clients had been. So it was kind of an odd jump. A lot of people look at it, but the progression was pretty organic, to say the least.
Well, that's interesting. So what I think is interesting is your approach has been, it appears, at least from the outside looking in, your approach has been, when you had an idea, set up a new brand for it.
Yep.
And talk to me a little bit about that decision. Was it just because you love to create brands and so it was just a natural thing to do? Or was that a strategic decision versus just building increased capabilities within the existing business?
Yeah. So, to be honest, the real reason why that ended up being that way, and even still to this day, why we have multiple companies, is because probably more than I'm the guy that comes up with an idea, I've been the guy that identifies people who have a very particular skill set and have been overlooked maybe in their professional career. And I kind of felt like it was time for somebody to, put some wind underneath their wings and bring them into the entrepreneurial world. And so, all of these companies, first and foremost, have not been me. I've been the person, I'm the cheerleader in the background. I do the finance, I help with the marketing. But each of these companies and these different brands started with me meeting somebody that had a skill set, had a network, and they were the subject matter expert. They came in as a partner, as a president, and we were basically the back office supporting them. And so that's the real reason. And honestly, over the years, multiple times, it would have been a lot easier to have all that revenue under one entity. But because of my style of startup is really based around, supporting, new business owners, new entrepreneurs, kind of have to break those up, and so that you don't, share everything under one roof.
Right. So having the advantage of experience now, when you look back on some of those decisions, would you still approach it the same way?
I think the design on how we did it, I would. I started those 6 business service companies. And what I learned the most is probably a better way to build teams, a better way to encourage and motivate and inspire and coach my business partners, and also a better way to dream and to forecast for more. To be completely honest, we sold off those companies, and my wife and I really, we did fine. We got out of everything, we made some money, and it was good. But really what kind of lit us up was, in 2014, I did this run across Texas. I did a solo run from El Paso to Orange. I ran 30 marathons in 30 days and kind of tapped into the actual potential that we have as humans. And when I got back from that run, it was kind of a spiritual awakening and going, what am I doing with these, several, $2 to $4.5 million companies? Why aren't these companies $20 to $100 million companies? And, that's really when we pushed to start trying to sell those off. And so I think for me, the big lesson looking back, or thing that I would have told myself, is, man, Jason, go for more, go bigger. And maybe I had to learn all those lessons to really appreciate
Right.
it. But yeah, that's probably the biggest takeaway. But the model, the structure, I still really like, because that's the same structure we use now.
Well, I want to come back to the run across Texas because actually your Texas Freedom Run in 2014, I want to come back to that because I want to explore that a little bit, because I think it's fascinating. But just talking about that business strategy there, and the decision to start the businesses the way that you did, partner with overlooked or up and coming or high potential partners, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So what do you think was the thing that was holding those organizations back from being those $20, $100 million companies?
Honestly, I think it was just vision. We going into, you got to remember too, when we started Brightbox, I started with $1,000, and that's not because the business model required it. It's because that's all I had. So literally started with nothing. And when you think of building a business when you have nothing, you're like, oh man, if we could just be a, $2 million company, all our problems will be solved. 10 years later, you realize $2 million companies are almost, they're kind of a handcuff. They require you on a day-to-day basis. You basically just became, self-employed rather than a business owner that's managing, your corporate assets. And I just think you got to go bigger, at least for me, for my model. And some people want to be self-employed, and that's fine. But that model for me works really well. And someone who's always been more of a servant, it's easy for me to see opportunity in other people. And I think that's probably more my passion than starting businesses and being a business person, is creating entrepreneurs and improving their lives through leveraging my experience. And that's what's been most fulfilling, for sure.
Have you found that not everyone is cut out for entrepreneurship?
Yeah. Found that out the hard way. And when I say the hard way, probably, I mean that in the most sincere way for those people, right?
Yeah.
I definitely have encouraged people into this lifestyle, because it really is a lifestyle, and it takes a certain amount of tenacity, and it takes the ability to deal with stress. And I've definitely, it's funny you asked that. I've talked with my wife a few weeks back, and there's definitely guys I still kind of look out for now, because I know I probably pulled them into this volatile lifestyle, and they maybe weren't just the right personality, and they're everybody's doing fine. It's not like,
Sure,
everybody's out on the street, but yeah, it's tough. Somebody who's outgoing and energetic and super optimistic. It took several years for me to understand how not everybody's like that. And it's okay that they're not, but
what do you think is required? What are the, what are the attributes that you would look for now, or that you are looking for now, is now you're applying the same concept of manufacturing for the large part. We'll talk a little bit more about it, but what are you looking for now?
A phrase that I came up with whenever my father passed a few years ago, and I was writing a post about him and trying to give him credit for being a great guy, even though he could have been a better dad, maybe. And the only thing that I could kind of come up with that came to mind was that he had this relentless pursuit for success. And I honestly believe that that's what it takes to be an entrepreneur, because 90% of us won't be millionaires riding on jets. 90% of us will make a decent lifestyle and be able to provide for our families, but there's sleepless nights. There's a lot of stress. There's uncertainty. And I think if you don't have that relentless pursuit of success, if you can't define yourself that way, I would rethink, going into business for yourself, because there's a lot of ways to climb a corporate ladder and make good money, potentially. And I would argue a lot of those people that do that make probably more than a lot of entrepreneurs. But yeah, I think that relentless pursuit for success is something that I'm looking for as, we're evaluating new businesses, new opportunities. If not, man, it just doesn't work. Just doesn't work.
How do you come down on the idea of visionary business leader versus operator business leader? And which one would you rather bet on if you had to choose?
I've gone back and forth on that. It's really, these are great questions, man. A lot of this stuff we're dealing with now, especially with all this COVID, and businesses are struggling right now. We've got several of our brands that are doing just exceptionally well given the environment. And we've got several that are, not doing as hot. And man, that's a tough question. I think for me, I'm really good at the visionary. I've learned my lessons in not setting a vision properly. I think operational, but I guess to back up, for me, a lot of our startups, we don't do with heavy capital, right? So we look for niche markets where we can enter the market. That's why we have a lot of service and manufacturing. We can obtain contracts and get into a position of business without having to set up $1 million factories and plants and stuff like that. And so there's 3 pillars to business, finance, operations, and sales. And someone different needs to play all 3 of those roles, in my opinion, to grow a company out of that $2 to $3 million a year range. And so I've got enough experience, and now I've built a team around me at Python that we can fill either one of those roles. And so if we meet somebody, as long as they have that relentless pursuit, they can sit in either one of those pillars, and then we're going to put a team around them for the other 2. Maybe it's a more complicated way to answer your question.
No, that makes sense. So today, so tell me a little bit about your business today. So we've alluded to manufacturing. So tell me what you're doing now. Tell me about Python Holdings and the types of organizations that you have now, and kind of what's attracted you to that market.
Yeah. So, we started out with a company called Grizzly Manufacturing. They're in the frac space, which is not the best space to be in at the moment. But when we started it, I had several clients in the past. I'd done a lot of market research, did a lot of brand launches into the oil and gas and frac space. And we had the opportunity to capitalize on a large contract with a large fracking company to refurbish frac equipment. And that company took off like a rocket and did exceptionally well, because I think we capitalized on those 3 pillars and made sure that the president we brought in was an operational guy. He was the best of the best mechanic. He's just superb. I handled the finance, and one of our other partners handled the sales. And so we were able to tackle that company like none other that I'd ever done, and grew exceptionally fast. That spun us off into looking at, hey, what else are we touching that we could capitalize on? We were outsourcing a lot of engineering and fabrication work. So we started a company called Bighorn that does engineering and fabrication. They're now also manufacturing utility trailers. We were also outsourcing a lot to cable companies, manufacturers of cable that go on these frac trailers. And all the big manufacturers were in Canada, and they had these long lead times. And so we decided to start our own cable manufacturing company. That led into wanting to diversify outside of the oil and gas. And so we started up a group that's focused on parts distribution and service in the wind space. So we've got a group down in South Texas focused on the wind farms. What else did we get into? It's been a wild ride. Going into this year, 2020, we were sitting at projected revenue about 150 million, and really, really excited. I had several hundred employees, and obviously in March, everything kind of tanked. We lost just about everything, and we didn't want to let go of this team that we had built. And so that's when we kind of got into this new realm of what we're doing now. And we picked up on this opportunity to start manufacturing PPE, personal protective equipment, polyethylene gowns, disposable isolation gowns. And, it was a short-term thing. We'll see how this goes. That grew into really where we are now is an unbelievable story with that company. We'll far exceed our annual revenue forecast with that division. We've just locked in some long-term contracts on some federal contracts for the next year. And so this was an interesting diversion from the rest of our portfolio, but now those portfolios are kind of coming back to, so somehow we kind of got into a lot of manufacturing, but I wouldn't say it was necessarily intentional. Again, we saw an opportunity of something, and then we identified someone that we felt was really, really good at that type of work. And then, basically just brought them up and supported them and wrapped them with a team that could, help leverage the opportunity.
That's an amazing story. Thanks for sharing that. The PPE space, it seems like a lot of people rushed there, and there were some people obviously who were already in that space, and so they kind of had a head start on people. But I'm surprised at how many people have been able to make a viable business out of that really, really quickly. Obviously, when there's demand, then supply has to fill it, and so if you can get there and find your spot, you can win. And I've seen several organizations win in that space. It's just been really impressive to watch guys just really jump in and make something out of that. It's been pretty awesome. I think some people have jumped in and not done well. And I think it might be because they just picked the wrong niche, or, they were operating with the wrong paradigm, like not understanding what the actual circumstances were.
Yeah, we saw that as soon as all of this happened, I knew there was going to be a huge opportunity for market change, right? And that if done right, could be a lasting market. There really wasn't a PPE manufacturing space in the United States, and we just, again, that relentless pursuit for success. We had engineers, we had MBAs, we had lawyers on staff at that time, and we said, man, we're going all in. And so within 3 months, we had over 2,400 employees, and we're by far the largest manufacturer of isolation gowns in the United States now. And that was because one, we listened to the government saying that they wanted to bring manufacturing back. We took that as a war cry, and we said, okay, let's go all in. And if they're serious about that, they're going to back us with the type of support. And Lord, did they. Some federal contracts came out that proved that they're going to help support these businesses that did it. So, I think a lot of those groups that failed, they saw it as a short window. They were making them out of their garage. I mean, we took on a 120,000 square foot facility within a couple months. I mean, we went full bore. So I think
that's remarkable to think that you went to 2,400 employees that quickly. So just tell me about that. Just tell me about what it takes to go from 0 to 2,400.
Oh man, a lot of risk.
And
a lot of help, right? I mean, we've got great business partners. We've got unbelievable team members. And it's in a weird, volatile market, right? And so when these orders are coming in these big waves, there's waves of cash, and then there's waves of no cash. And We had to lean on, staffing groups to help us out, and they were a great resource for us initially. But it was tough, man, and I think if we didn't have the vision that this was going to get bigger and bigger, the bigger we got, the more potential we had for long-term success, right? If we could get big enough, quick enough, we could do the volume we needed to be able to match or beat out China. And, we're there. Once you put your import tax and your shipping, we can compete on a global level with our gowns and our product. And I think if we didn't get up to those millions of gowns a week as quick as we did, there's just no way we would have had that scale. So, some of it now is kind of surreal. It's still a bit of a blur when you ask about what does it really take. Not a lot of sleep, I can tell you that. Still trying to figure some of this out. How in the world did this happen? But yeah, I think just having a solid team, man. I mean, there's just no way we could have done it. Now, I think that's kind of the testament of the oil and gas market, right? I mean, there's just some unbelievable people in this space, and you take those people out of that market, put them into any other industry. This oil and gas team and their grit and their grind is just unbelievable. And they tackled this PPE space like nothing else, and it was just so surprising, and I'm just so proud to be able to be working with these people.
That's amazing. So what do you think the long-term outlook is for PPE? Do you feel like this is a flash? Do you think we're at the top of a bell curve, or what do you think? Or do you think it's going to keep growing?
I think there's a little bit of a bell curve, because at some point, China's going to come back in the market, depending on what the White House does. But very early on, we went out and we were getting orders from Methodist and Texas Children and the VA, and they were all ecstatic that we were getting into the space. And so what we picked up from them was that, sure, while some of the market's probably going to go back to China, right, because they can save some pennies, there's going to be a percentage of the market that's going to stay here in the United States. And those sleepless nights, that's kind of what we kept reminding ourselves of, is that, hey, man, the folks that are wearing these gowns are telling us that they want American, they want the option to have American, and they know the only way to have the option is to keep some capacity of orders coming. And so what we've done now to help sustain that is we've started a nonprofit, American PPE Manufacturing Association. In this association, we're bringing in other PPE manufacturers to kind of create a group that can, help fund the proper lobbying and exposure to support. I mean, by December, we'll have 66 or 6,800 employees, and we're one shop, right? There's tons of other groups. I mean, we're talking tens of thousands of jobs, if not hundreds of thousands of jobs, and billions of dollars that are coming into American manufacturing, American entrepreneurs. And so, this nonprofit's going to help go spread that word and make sure that we're getting the recognition and the support and the attention that we need.
So is this because some of the other businesses that you've been involved in have, were oil and gas centric, or maybe were just impacted by COVID? So two depressed situations, right? Have you just been able to pull resources from those organizations into the new PPE business, and so that's what's allowed you to have such a strong leadership team?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, we had great people. Like I said, when everything crashed, the number one goal was to keep as many people as we could, and we had so many amazing people on staff. And specifically, one of our companies, Wildcat, that was making the cables manufacturing, and they were doing a lot of data vans and remote surveillance tower systems. So a very, very technical team. They had process engineers and electrical engineers on staff. They basically jumped at the opportunity to tackle this product, and they're the ones that really ran with it. But yeah, I mean, that entire team is still intact. And I don't think most people from other industries, especially if they're not used to taking risk. I mean, we took on hundreds of thousands of dollars. Well, actually, it was closer to $1 million within about 60 days of all this happening. So I just don't think most people have the temperament and the risk profile to do that. But we just kept kind of doubling down. Kind of took my casino temperament into the business world.
Right. So, there are people out there who like to argue. You can read, the gurus and the business pundits who'll say, look, if you want to build something significant, you can't. You have to focus. You have to do one thing. You have to be relentless in the pursuit of that one thing, and you have to be willing to say no a lot. I don't really get the feeling that you follow that sort of thought process. So talk to me a little bit about, your approach to saying no or saying yes, and your approach to business from that perspective.
Yeah. Probably would want to talk to my wife more than me about that. The saying no is, I'm not good at it, man. And I think that's probably a good rule, but every rule is a good rule until it's no longer good. Right. And so I don't follow a lot of that. I started off obviously reading all the books and subscribing to all the gurus, because there's a lot of good lessons in there, but I think everybody has a different temperament. Everybody has a different skill set, different personality. And, the reason why we're able to do more than most is because we bring in more partners than most. I mean, everything that we do, I have a vested partner that is a subject matter expert in that. And so when I list off all these things we're doing, I mean, Jason is not the expert in, injection molded cables. We have a partner who is, and he is focused, right? And so to a lot of extent, I think that's true. You got to have someone that's laser focused, but it doesn't mean that you have to be. And if you got a little ADD like I do, I don't think I could focus on one thing for more than a few weeks before I got to switch it up, And so for me, it's just been good. It's been a great recipe for me. I don't think it's for everyone because people do like to get down in the weeds. I'm just not that guy. I like to see opportunity. I like to believe in people, and I like to give them as much support and resources as I can to make them successful.
I do think it's dangerous at times. I do think that if you're a true entrepreneur, then the way I define an entrepreneur is that, or one of the ways I should say that I define is that they just can't help seeing opportunity everywhere, right?
Yeah.
When you're talking to one, because they tell you, I was on the way to work this morning, I had a thought. Like everything always starts like that. Or I was on a trip and I saw something and I thought, I wonder if that would work where I'm at, or I wonder if you could do it differently. Like they're always thinking about those things.
Yeah.
And I do think that so many times entrepreneurs have been sort of shamed into, look, stay focused. That's the reason you're not getting where you need to get, because you're not focused enough. And I think, there's some truth to that. So I don't want to dismiss it entirely, but I do think a lot of times that great idea doesn't get explored enough because they're afraid of the shame of, are people going to think I'm distracted? Are people going to think that I'm not serious?
Well, and I think where I've lucked out is that whenever I have those ideas, I go find somebody else that's an expert in it, and I get out of the way. I don't micromanage. Once the vision is set and I have a business partner that comes in and buys in on the vision, I get the hell out of the way, because I know that I'll muddy it up. Oh, well, what about this? And what about that? Why don't we do this? Why don't we do this? And you'll never get to market. We know a lot of entrepreneurs that, myself included, that, they're just insane to sit in meetings with sometimes. Right. And, because they've always got another idea, and it's like, we've got to finish this plan A before you're already on D, slow down a minute, and they want to throw all the ideas out. And it does take a lot of restraint, and it takes a lot of discipline, and it takes a lot of, faith and belief that the people that you brought in are going to execute that vision. And I think that's where I've just been lucky, to be honest. I mean, I've been blessed to be, surrounded by some great business partners, and some presidents of these companies that allow me to continue to come up with other ideas and see opportunity in other people. And it's been a real blessing for me.
That's awesome. So let's talk about the Freedom Run back in 2014.
Okay.
So what in the world was that about? Like what drove you to do that, first of all?
So there was a cause that really, really drove me to it. And that cause was child sex trafficking. I got introduced to an organization called Love 146 in 2013, and just really felt kind of pulled on my heart to want to do something. I knew I could give some money, I could donate some time, but I really wanted to give more. And so I prayed on it for a few weeks and decided that, hey, I was going to combine some passions here. I was already doing Ironmans and marathons, and decided, hey, you know, I'm going to do kind of this big PR stunt. I'm going to do some endurance activity, and I'm going to help this charity in raising money and awareness to fight this horrible cause. And all of that kind of came together as this crazy run across Texas. But I think there was some other stuff, you know, some mental stuff going on in there for sure. I mean, Lance Armstrong said, you know, every endurance runner is running from something. So I think there was a little bit of discovery, you know, what am I doing? What am I capable of? You know, we've been super, super busy for years building those smaller startups. And I think I was trying to test the limits of myself a little bit and figure out what's possible. Yeah, and it was really the best thing we could have done. We raised a bunch of money for the nonprofit, you know, spoke at dozens of schools and churches, and tapped into something in myself as well along the way that I wasn't really expecting, but has really helped change my life, you know, since then on kind of my own self-belief and what I can do.
You know, I've run a marathon, not 30. I ran one and said, well, that's great. I did that. So that's I can relate, but you know, I can relate to the idea of challenging oneself and taking yourself out of your comfort zone. Last year, I hiked Kilimanjaro. You know, I'm trying to do things right. You know, because I recognize that same thing that I think you're talking about. That on one hand, it's good to just be so in the moment with something that you're doing that's difficult, that it frees up your mind from the other things. Because we've already talked about these entrepreneurial minds, right? They don't stop.
Yeah,
they're constantly going. And then all the pressure that's associated with this lifestyle, as you put it, that getting out there and exerting yourself and stretching yourself and challenging yourself in a certain direction can be really freeing and can cause breakthroughs, right, in other areas of our lives. Yeah. And so it obviously happened for you. I think that's tremendous. I love that what you shared earlier, that your takeaway was that you're not thinking big enough, right? That there was more there, and that you need to put yourself in a position to do more, to realize more of what maybe you realized your potential was. I think that's fascinating. What was the hardest part about 30 days, 30 marathons in 30 days across Texas? Just
well, physically, the hardest part was I think day 5. I was getting tired. We had a big incline the last mile of the day, and I rolled my ankle, and so you know that swole up pretty bad. And you know I think there was another 10 or so days, 10 marathons after that, of limping and hobbling on that. But, you know, the physical and the pain, you know, that comes and goes. I think that really the toughest part was just being away from, you know, friends and family. I'm a social person. I'm really involved, you know, obviously with my family and my wife, and, you know, just being away from that support system was really, really tough. Harder than I thought it was going to be, honestly, because I take pride in being a strong guy. And I think that also helped show me my strength comes from having these amazing people around me. And showed how dependent I am on other people to help inspire me and light me up and get me excited. So yeah, definitely being away from, you know, folks and your support system was the most difficult part for sure.
Well, it's amazing. I'm proud to know that you did that. That's exciting, and it's such a great cause. And when we wrap this up and we kind of publish this out, if there's a link that you want to include to that organization or any other organization that you think you'd like people to pay attention to, we'd be happy to include that. That's amazing. So I guess I want to kind of wrap up going back to, because we talked about a lot of different things here, but I want to go back to your marketing days. I want to go back to your roots from a marketing perspective. And I know that's maybe part of the role you play for your new organizations is just marketing strategy and go to market, right? What were some of the most exciting successes that you had from from a marketing standpoint at Brightbox and some of the other service companies that you had started? When you think back on those times, what are some of the things that you were most proud of?
Oh man. I mean, there's milestones, personally and professionally that we hit. I had left a job, making $50,000-$60,000 a year, and was able to personally, beat that, and make more just in our first year. There were so many personal ones, but I think the biggest ones were, obviously, as I said before, just at least feeling like I'm always kind of got this servant heart. I mean, it's taking other people's visions and bringing them to market, meeting a client who had a product and helping to cast a vision around how we're going to deploy that product and how we're going to talk about it and who's the people that are going to buy it and what do they look like, what do they sound like, and where do they hang out online, and coming up with the vision and the messaging to get that stuff out there, and then seeing that product sell, and it changes that entrepreneur's life and his vision and the goals, and people are being hired and jobs are being created. I mean, it's just, that to me was the most exhilarating part of that whole journey. And I think I became addicted to that, to say the least. And that's why, we started our own companies. We started practicing what we preached. And, I'm telling, our clients to do this stuff. We need to be doing this stuff, and it was just, meeting all those people and working with them. And, we've sold off all those businesses now, but still being good relationships with, those former business partners. Gosh, man, I don't know. There's so many things when I think about it. I hadn't, it's been a crazy 6 months, so I haven't really reflected too much. But yeah, you got me thinking about it. And yeah, I think just the impact that it had on all the people that we work with, clients, partners, ourselves. I mean, it's just an amazing chapter in my life for sure.
Marketing's a funny thing. Obviously, that's the focus of my company and what we do. Several years ago, I went through a process where I was trying to understand what our purpose was, right? And, it's a really hard thing to do. It sounds simple, and then you sit down to do it and you go, wait a second, like, man, this is actually tricky. And one of the things that we came up with and that we've sort of latched onto over the years, and sometimes people roll their eyes, but I wonder what you would think is we said that when we believe that when good companies grow faster, the world's a better place.
Ooh, yeah.
And for us, that was what you're talking about, that when we're growing and we're building businesses and we're helping, is our role as an agency, when we help businesses grow, people are being employed, shareholders are making profits, communities are being impacted in lots of different ways. And so people are recognizing their full potential. People are expanding and growing and learning and developing. Like, these are all things that contribute to a better world. And so, I think we're a kindred spirit in that sense, that that when we can help people achieve what they need to achieve or what they set out to do, that's our little way of making the world a better place. And it's really exciting to do it.
No, I love that, man. I think, when you start thinking about, the meaning of life, I think if you didn't include growth in that meaning some way, I think you'd be maybe not tapping into what life is meant to be. And that's, internal and spiritual. But I think business and your network and your financial ability, I think growth it's mesmerizing. It's captivating. It's exciting. And being able to do it for other people, man, there's nothing better. I mean, to give that opportunity to somebody else to break away from a corporate job and do better for their family and start going on vacations. And
right.
I mean, it's unbelievable, so yeah, I love that. I think you articulated it way better with that phrase there. I'm gonna have to steal that.
Yeah. You're welcome to.
Yeah,
well, look, Jason, I've really enjoyed this. I don't want to keep you all day. This was really exciting. Really proud to know you and excited to see the growth that you're experiencing right now. And it's not an accident. You've paid your dues. You're one of those guys that's a 12-year overnight success, right? And so
that means more than anything, saying it's not an accident, man. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, it's not. It's not. I mean, every decision you make now has been informed by a decade or more of good and bad decisions along the way that help us. So it's exciting to see what you're doing. I'm really proud. If there's anything I can do to ever help you, please let me know. And look, I really appreciate you being on the show. Look, remember, folks, as we always say here, the best way for you to impact the world is by growing yourself, growing your organizations, and growing your company. Those are the big three of B2B leadership. All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Bye.
Pro Sales Connection is a sales and marketing firm that has been helping B2B companies grow faster since 2009. Learn more about our proprietary fastest path to revenue process for B2B companies. Experiencing the possibilities begins with a short 15-minute call. Schedule yours at www.prosalesconnection.com and click Get Started.